Every night in the finest house in Baghdad, a woman whips two black dogs 300 times and then holds them and weeps. Tonight, before the Caliph's throne, she must finally say why. Welcome back to Nightfall Tales, where the lamp is lit and the old stories are told the way they were meant to be heard. After dark. When we last left Baghdad, a porter and three uninvited guests had broken the one rule of a strange and splendid house. Ask no questions about what you see. They saw two black dogs whipped and then embraced. They saw a doorkeeper marked with scars. And when the forbidden question was finally asked, swords were drawn over their necks. But one of those guests was no merchant at all. He was Harun al-Rashid, the Caliph himself, walking his city in disguise. And by morning the three ladies of that house stood summoned before his throne, where no secret may stay hidden. This is the tale the eldest lady told to save them all. The morning sun fell across the court of the Abbasid Empire, and the hall was silent. The three ladies stood veiled before the throne, and beside them, on chains of silk, sat the two black dogs. The man they had feasted with the night before now wore the robes of the commander of the faithful. Harun al-Rashid leaned forward and spoke quietly, the way powerful men do when they no longer need to raise their voice. "Tell me the truth of your house," he said. "The dogs that are beaten and then embraced. Speak truly and no harm will come to you." The eldest of the three stepped forward, lifted her veil, and said words no one in that hall expected. "Commander of the faithful, these two dogs are my sisters." And then she began. "We were three daughters of one father," she said, "born of different mothers. When our parents died, each of us inherited a share of gold, enough to live with dignity, enough to be ruined by. My two elder sisters married quickly. Their husbands were charming men, the kind who smile widest when they are reaching for your purse. Within a few years, both men had squandered everything, the gold, the dowries, even the houses. And then they vanished, leaving my sisters stranded in foreign lands like baggage no one claimed. One by one, my sisters came back to my door, ragged and ashamed. And I will tell you what I did because it matters for what comes later. I opened the door. I clothed them, fed them, and shared my wealth as if it were ours. When they wished to marry again, I warned them, and they did not listen, and they were betrayed again, and again I took them in. I forgave my sisters twice, Commander of the Faithful. Remember that. In time my trade prospered, and I resolved to sail with my goods as merchants do. I divided my fortune, half locked safe at home, half loaded onto a ship, and my sisters begged to come with me. We sailed for days with a fair wind. Then the wind changed. For 10 days the sea pushed us where it wanted, far off every chart the captain knew, until the lookout cried out from the mast. A city stood on the shore ahead, high walls, towers, domes that caught the light strangely. The captain stared at it and admitted he had never seen this place in all his years at sea. We anchored. He went ashore first, and when he returned, his face was the color of ash. "They are all stone," he said. "Every soul in that city has been turned to black stone." I went ashore myself, because there are things a person must see with her own eyes. It was true. The markets were full, merchants frozen mid-bargain, scales still in their hands, coins fused to stone palms. Horses of stone stood harnessed to carts of stone. In the palace, guards stood at their posts with stone spears, and on the throne sat the king himself, black stone from crown to heel, and beside him his queen, her jewels still real and glittering on a body hard as basalt. Whatever judgment had fallen on this city had fallen in a single instant, in the middle of an ordinary day. My sisters found the treasuries and began to fill their arms. But I walked deeper into the palace, following something I could not name, until behind a door I heard a sound that did not belong in a dead city. A human voice, low and steady, reciting in the dark. In a small chamber lit by a single lamp sat a young man on a prayer rug. A Quran opened before him, the only living thing in a city of stone. He told me his story in a voice worn smooth by solitude. The city had been his father's kingdom, and its people had worshipped fire instead of the one merciful God. But an old believing woman, hidden among them, had secretly raised the prince in the true faith. For 3 years, he said, a voice like thunder had rolled over the rooftops, warning the city to turn back. They laughed at it, and one morning the voice fell silent, and so did everything else. His father, his mother, every guard and servant and stranger, stone between one heartbeat and the next. Only he was spared. He had lived alone among the statues ever since, praying, fasting, waiting for either death or deliverance. I sat with him in that lamplight, and I will say it plainly. My heart decided before I did. I would not leave him there. I told him of Baghdad, its scholars, its mosques, its rivers of people and trade, and I asked him to sail home with me. He agreed. And here, commander of the faithful, I did the thing that sealed my fate. I went to my sisters and gave them everything. My goods, my gold, my share of all we carried. Take it, I said. This man is what I choose. They smiled and kissed me and called me blessed. We loaded the ship at dawn and sailed with a fair wind for Basra. But envy is a patient animal. My sisters watched the prince and me on that deck day after day, and something in them turned. On a quiet night, while the whole ship slept, they came to where we lay, and they lifted us, and they threw us into the sea. The prince could not swim. The sea took him quickly and quietly and forever. The last living soul of the stone city, drowned by two jealous women in the dark. Me, the waves chose to spare. I caught a floating plank and clung to it through the night, and by morning I was thrown onto the shore of an island. I ate what fruit I found, dried my clothes, and followed a narrow spit of land toward the mainland. And there on the path, I saw a thing that stopped my breath, a serpent rushing toward me, half mad with terror, and behind it a far greater serpent, jaws already closing on its tail. I do not know what made me act. I took up a heavy stone, and I brought it down on the great serpent's skull and killed it with one blow. The small serpent looked at me, looked the way no animal looks, then spread wings I had not seen, rose into the sky, and was gone. I lay down in the grass, certain I had lost my mind, and slept. When I woke, a young woman was sitting at my feet, and beside her sat two black dogs. "Do you remember the serpent you saved?" she asked. That serpent was me. She was a jinn, and the great serpent had been her enemy, and my one blind act of mercy had bought her debt forever. So she had repaid it in the way of the jinn, thoroughly and terribly. She had found my sister's ship, sunk it to the seafloor, and carried every bale of my goods back to my house in Baghdad. Nothing missing down to the last coin. And my sisters, she gestured at the two black dogs, and they pressed themselves to the ground and whined like things that understood. Then she gave me her command. Each night I must give each of them 300 lashes, she said, so that their treachery is never forgotten. And if I show mercy and stop, the jinn would return, and I would join them as a third dog at my own hearth. "So now you know, commander of the faithful," said the lady, "why the guests in my house saw what they saw. Every night I whip my own sisters until my arm aches, because a jinn's mercy spared my life and her justice chained it. And every night when it is done, I hold them, and they lick the tears from my face, and we grieve together for what envy cost us all." The hall stood silent. The Caliph of all the faithful, who had heard 1,000 petitions and 1,000 lies, looked at the two black dogs for a long moment. "A tale full of wonder," he said at last, "of kindness repaid and treachery punished." But his eyes had already moved to the second lady, the doorkeeper, the one who kept to the shadows of the hall, because hers was the other secret of that house, the marks of the whip on her own body. "And lady," said the Caliph softly, "who scarred you?" The doorkeeper's story, the marriage that began like a dream and ended under the lash, and the man whose jealousy nearly killed her. That is a tale for another night here at Nightfall Tales. If tonight's story held you, you know what to do. Subscribe and let the lamp find you again. The nights are long, the stories are old, and Scheherazade has only just begun. Until next time, keep the lamp burning.